Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Roar. Today, I am going to share with you a little bit about personal growth and being intentional. But before I get started, for those of you that are watching this for the very first time and you have no idea who I am, and even for those of you that are watching it and want a refresher, my name is Greg Storch. I am the founder of Lion Enterprise, and I run a leadership development and coaching company. And I work with first-time managers as they transition from employee to boss. So today, during this live event on Facebook, if you're watching live, please feel free to give me the hashtag live. And if you're catching this on the replay, go ahead, throw in the comments, hashtag replay. That way I know where you guys are catching me live from. All right. During the live, if you feel like it, please throw some comments on there. If something I say resonates with you, talk about it, throw it on there. If I don't get to your comments live, I will go back to the comments as soon as I'm finished, and I'll go through all of them, and I'll definitely respond to you and engage in the conversation. But I want to see some activity there. Don't forget to give me the loves, the likes, the thumbs up, the hearts. Do all that stuff, because the more you like, the more you love, the further this goes, and I want to get my message out there to everybody. So today we're going to be talking about intentionality and personal growth. But before I do, if you're live with me right now, and I can't see if you are or not because the sun's blinding me, I just want to say, why don't you, in the comments here below, go ahead and tell me where you're watching from, city, state, whatever, doesn't matter, but give me something down there in the comments to let me know where you're watching live. I am sitting in Parco Guerini, a small park within the city center of Vicenza, Italy. Lots of people come here, as you can probably hear in the background. There's tons of people around me. Steve, how you doing? I just saw you pop on. I'm in Parco Guerini, which is one of the green spaces in downtown Vicenza. So, lots of people come to this park. As you can see behind me, there's I don't know what this thing is, some kind of dome, but it was built in the mid 1850s or so. It's been here for quite some time, so it's a pretty historic place. But a lot of people come to this park just to relax and to exercise. It's a great running spot. So it's just beautiful here. And the nicest thing about this is this park is only walking distance from our apartment here. So it's really awesome. All right, well, let's just jump right into it. Tanya, how you doing? Both of you watching from Northern Virginia, thanks for joining me. I am out in the park, Parco Guerino, one of the green spaces here in Vicenza, Italy. And today we're talking about intentionality and personal growth. I was doing some more reading, refreshing, growing, and getting into the 15 invaluable laws of growth. And I just wanted to talk about intentionality because, you know what? Personal growth doesn't just happen. You got to be intentional about growing. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. And I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the gaps, some of the things that stand in our way of growing. Because we have problems getting intentional about it because we're just not sure what we're trying to achieve. So, you know, growth is how we get better. It's how we improve our relationships. It's how we gain wisdom and insight on things. If you're not growing, you're dying. So you got to be constantly growing to get better at whatever it is in life that you want to do. And who doesn't want to get better, right? All right. I'm being bombarded by winds. My water bottle's blowing off. The best laid plans of mice and men, right? So anyway, I want to talk to you about what it really takes to do all that. You know, James Allen is an author, well, was an author, and he wrote a book back in the early 1900s called As a Man Thinketh. And in it, he says, people are always anxious to improve their circumstances, but they're unwilling to improve themselves. And this is our problem. Hi, Nellie, how are you? So, in order for us to achieve our dreams and goals, you have to grow. Hands down, that's all there is to it. Sometimes there's gaps in that growth. And a lot of times it's because of your thoughts. And I've done many talks on a positive mindset. So that's not what we're doing today. So our thoughts sometimes will get in our way. And that's why I'm going to share some of these things with you today. Because I'm hoping that if we can identify them to help you realize where you need to change your thinking and where you need to change your mindset, those things that are holding you back from being intentional, then I can help you get over these gaps and help you start to grow again. Because until you can figure out where you want to grow and where you want to be, then you can't get intentional because you won't know what you want to be doing. Stacy, how are you doing? Welcome for joining me. I'm in this lovely park right downtown Vicenza, coming to you live outside. I just wanted to check, and hopefully my connection's good. So anyway, one of the first things we do that gets in our way of becoming intentional is we make assumptions. It's called the assumption gap. We assume that growth is just going to happen. You know, one of the reasons why this gets in our way is because naturally we grow. When we're born, we start to grow physically until adulthood, right? We just naturally grow. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to do anything about it. We just grow. And it messes with our minds because then we start to think any growth is just going to happen. But that's not the truth. You got to put forth an effort. It just doesn't happen. So this is the assumption gap, where we just assume that growth is going to occur. That's not the case. Physically, yes. But you know what they say when we assume, right? I'm not going to say it here, but you know what they say. So what happens is we carry that same thought about growth, physical growth, that we're just naturally going to grow bigger and stronger, right? We carry that same thought like it's going to happen for us emotionally and spiritually and even mentally. And that's just not true. Your personal growth doesn't just happen. So when we're in school, we grow in these areas spiritually and mentally and emotionally. But once you graduate, then who's responsible for your personal growth? That's right. You are. So this is where I think a lot of people falter. They get through school and they stop growing because they don't take responsibility for their personal growth. But when we reach the end of school, our growth doesn't stop, does it? Of course not. Of course it doesn't. You have to take ownership of it because no one else is going to do it for you, just you. So if you want things to change or improve, you have to improve yourself. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if this is making sense to you about personal growth and becoming intentional. So with the assumption gap, is this you? Are you making assumptions that you're just going to naturally grow just like you did physically? That you're going to naturally grow emotionally and mentally, spiritually? Are your relationships just going to automatically grow? Have you been assuming your growth is just going to happen? If so, understand that you have to take action to grow and get rid of this thought. Because it's not going to just happen. Don't make that assumption. You have to get rid of that thought and you have to become intentional. All right? So if that was your gap, go ahead and give me a comment below saying, I've been making assumptions. No more. Okay. Okay. The other thing that happens is we fall into this trap called the knowledge gap. And this is an interesting one because the knowledge gap makes us think, well, I don't know how to grow. So we don't put forth any effort because we just don't know. It's fear of the unknown. So when you don't know something, you just don't do it, right? This is another gap. So, I mean, who knows how to make a growth plan? Not many people. It wasn't very long ago that I even learned the word growth plan. I didn't know what it was either. I want to share a little story with you about my growth journey and where I was when I started thinking about these things, because this was one of my gaps. Was I just didn't know. I didn't know how to grow. But I was driving to work one morning and I was listening to the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth by John Maxwell on Audible. And I'm driving there and he's talking about the growth plan. And that's when it hit me. I was like, what is this? What's a growth plan? I don't have a growth plan. And listen, I was panicking, to be honest with you, because I was about to turn 50 years old. I had gone through half my life without a growth plan. But I made the decision at age 48, 2 years ago, to get serious about a growth plan. And my growth over the last 2 years has been exponential. Spiritually, emotionally, my relationships have changed. All of these areas as soon as I got intentional with my actions and my thoughts. So that's why I'm sharing this with you today. It's not too late. So this is the other gap, right? Is the knowledge gap. We just don't know what we don't know. You can learn from life's lessons as you go through life, and you can grow a little bit here. And, you know, I graduated from the School of Hard Knocks. But the problem is, these are going to be random lessons that you learn. And that's the thing. They're just random. You're never going to get anywhere being random like that. So I just warn you that don't convince yourself that you don't know. Don't be afraid that a growth plan is a new concept to you. It's okay. It's never too late to start. So I encourage you to think about that. So if the knowledge gap is one of your gaps, if you just think you don't know how, you're not alone. You're not alone. Knowing that you need to grow is a great start. And once you are clear on what you want, your world becomes a lot clearer to you. Does that make sense? If that's making sense to you guys, give me a thumbs up. Give me some love. And I just want to say, if this is your gap, stop convincing yourself that you don't know how to grow. Here's how you can gain some clarity. You can get clarity by asking yourself these questions. Where do you need to grow? What areas of your life do you need to grow? Where do you need to get better at? And then you can also ask yourself, where do you want to grow? Where are some areas in your life that you just want to get better at? These are all opportunities for you to get better and areas for you to grow as an individual. So answer those. Then the what you need to do will be clear. We have some guests with us right now. Pardon the interruption. All right. So ask yourself those two questions. And once you get that clarity, then you can start identifying the what behind the where you want to go. Does that make sense? All right. The next gap I want to talk to you about, and again, I think I might have convinced myself of this gap too. This one is called the timing gap. The timing gap is when we tell ourselves it's just not the right time. I'm too busy. I could never focus on myself right now. I've just got too much other stuff. Parents fall into this trap all the time because of their children. Their focus is on them and not on themselves. That's the biggest disservice you can do to your children, is stop growing. You know, we model behavior for our children. And when you show them that you're growing, they learn how to continually grow. So when they leave school, they'll know that growth is a continual thing all your life. So the timing gap says that it's not a good time for us. And we convince ourselves that we'll grow later. Ain't nobody got time for that. Right? So, you know what though? The funny thing about timing is it's always gonna be that way. There's never gonna be a good time. This is why our watches don't tell us what the right time is. Does your watch say, oh, hey, it's the right time? No, of course not, because there's never the right time to do something. You just gotta commit and do it. Hey, listen to this. I love this. John, in the book, in this very first chapter on intentionality and the 15 invaluable laws of growth, John shares a riddle that his father shared with him as a child. And he says, my father would ask me this riddle. 5 frogs are sitting on a log. 4 of those frogs decide to jump in the water. How many frogs are left on the log? And John would always say, 1 frog, of course. And his father would say, no. There's 5 frogs still on the logs, because there is a huge difference between deciding to do something and actually doing it. Just because the frogs decided to jump in the water didn't mean they did it. They just made the decision to do it. And this is where we get stuck. Don't be one of those frogs making a decision to do something and never taking action to do it. Go ahead, jump off that log, and get in the water. I love that. You just got to do it, and you got to stop waiting for the right time. You know, there's a law called the law of diminishing intent. And the law of diminishing intent simply states that the longer you wait to do something, then the greater the odds that you're not going to do it. How many people here have fallen under that law? All the time we procrastinate. All the time. We'll get to it later, and later never comes, right? If this has happened to you before, if you've used this excuse not to do something, give me the thumbs up. You know, I recently read a book by Mel Robbins, and it's called The 5-Second Rule. And she basically reinforces the law of diminishing intent. In the 5-second rule, she talks about having to come up with this way of forcing herself into action. And she said she would count down from 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, act. And the reason she used 5 seconds was because after 5 seconds, your brain automatically shifts and starts telling yourself or convincing yourself why you shouldn't be doing something. So she was getting out in front of her brain so she could start taking action. If you've never read The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins, you might want to give it a try. It's an awesome book. I love her story. It comes from a place where she came to a dark time and she couldn't even physically get out of bed. She was so depressed. And this is where the 5-second rule came into play. So the law of diminishing intent, the longer you wait, the more likely it is it's not gonna happen. You can't put off your personal growth or it's never gonna happen. Is this one of your gaps? Are you telling yourself now's not a good time? Well, you know what? You just have to do it. Just like Nike says, just do it. You'll get more done by just starting something, even if you aren't ready to do it, than if you just keep telling yourself it's not the right time. All right. I hope you guys are still with me. If that was one of your gaps, stop telling yourself it's not a good time. There's never going to be a better time than right here, right now. All right. Now listen, the last one I really wanted to cover with you is called the comparison gap. And as It's Robbins, R-O-B-B-I-N-S. You got it, Stacy. Mel Robbins. She's a CNN anchor. So I got a little friend here learning how to grow right now. So anyway, this last gap is called the comparison gap, and the reason I'm talking about it is because I think with social media, we've had a real tendency to compare ourselves to people. And this is a big problem because all we're seeing on social media are people's highlights. It's all the successes they're having. It's all the great things. They're sharing their wins with you, and we're making a comparison to that. And the comparison gap will stop us from growing. This gap is created when we tell ourselves we're not as good as somebody else. We're not as good as they are. I'm not as good as Steve Bailey was. When you start telling yourself and comparing yourself to somebody else and convincing yourself that you're not good enough, you'll stunt your growth. You won't grow. And the thing with comparing is we always compare on misinformation. Hey Steve, how you doing, buddy? When you compare yourself, especially on social media, you're comparing yourself on misinformation. You're comparing their highlight reel to your behind the scenes. And that's not the same. It's apples and oranges. Love it. So is the comparison gap your gap to growth? You know, there's always gonna be others that are ahead of you in life, and there's gonna be some people that are behind you in life. That's just the way it is. And you know what's funny is the people that are behind you, they're comparing themselves to you and saying, I'm not as good as they are. And they're falling into that gap and stunting their personal growth. They can't get to intentional actions because they haven't been able to identify where they want to grow, where they want to grow and where they need to grow. So sometimes we think people are so far ahead of me, they're so far out of my league. You gotta stop worrying about other people. Stop comparing yourself. Don't get wrapped up in the social media comparison game. Be comfortable with where you're at right here, right now. This is your journey, and where you are is exactly where you were meant to be. Now, I will ask you this. Is there something you've wanted to accomplish? Do you have some goals? Do you have a dream? If you have goals and dreams and you have not reached them yet, you gotta ask yourself why. Ask yourself these questions. What is it I want to accomplish? And why haven't I done it yet? What do I need to do to get to where I want to go? Once you've identified what you need to do, then you can start determining what actions you need to take. And once you know what actions you need to take, that's when you become intentional. And when you become intentional, you will grow. I promise you, you will grow. All right, I love this stuff. So whether you're just starting out or already a few steps in, someone is always going to be ahead of you and somebody's always going to be behind you. But that's okay, because it only matters where you're at. All right, so those are some of the gaps that stop us from growing and becoming intentional in our actions. You gotta close those gaps, get clear, and be able to take intentional actions on your goals and your dreams. So today we covered the assumption gap. I've got an audience here drinking water at the water fountain. Hi, Diane. We just covered the assumption gap, that you're just assuming you're gonna grow without any effort. And we already know if that's your gap, it's not gonna happen. You have to be intentional about growing. We also talked about the knowledge gap. We just don't know how to grow. I didn't know how to grow 2 years ago, but once I applied myself, the growth has been exponential. Identify where you want to grow and where you need to grow. Start there. We also talked about the timing gap. Now's just not the right time. It's never the right time. If you look at your watch and you can tell me when the right time is, let me know. Just get started. Don't worry if it's not the right time. Getting started is half the battle. And then the last gap we talked about was the comparison gap. I talked a little bit about how we compare ourselves to people, and it's been more and more of a problem with social media. We see everybody's highlight reels on social media about all their successes and their wins, and we compare that to how we're doing. The problem with that is that that's their highlight reel. We're seeing their highlight reel and we're comparing it to our behind the scenes. You're comparing apples to oranges. They're just not the same. Everybody is at their own place in their own journey, and it doesn't matter where they are. It's got nothing to do with your journey. Your journey is your journey, and where you are today right now is exactly where you're meant to be. And it's not too late to get started, to become intentional with your actions towards achieving your goals and reaching your dreams. So which one's your gap? Where do you need to grow? Where do you need to grow? And where do you want to grow? Answer these questions to become clear on where you need to grow, and then determine the actions you need to take to do it. And that's when you become intentional with your actions. That's when you start to see things happen for yourself. You start to reach your goals. You start to achieve your dreams. All right. Those were just a few of the gaps. I personally identified with those gaps. So thank you all for joining me again. I know this was a new day and a new time, so I appreciate you making the adjustment to meet me here. This is a beautiful park in downtown Vicenza. I wanted to share this with you. I hope you all have a great week ahead. Be powerful, but stay poised just like a lion. I'll see you all next week on The Weekly Roar. Ciao!
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.